Do any of you know the Boy Scout motto? Okay. Who knows the Boy Scout motto? Be prepared. We've got a few Boy Scouts here, former Boy Scouts. Be prepared. What does it mean to you to be prepared? Can someone tell me what it means to be prepared? What does it mean? To be ready. To be ready. Ready for what? For anything? For something special? Who knows? Be ready. Yes?
For what you're doing.
For whatever you're doing, you've got to be prepared. Give me an example of something you need to prepare for. Bobby? A birthday. What do you have to do to prepare for a birthday? There's lots of things. Give me an example. Got a piñata. I love where Bobby begins. Can't have a birthday without a piñata. Absolutely. Presents. What's a birthday without the presents? What do you need for a birthday? Cake! There we go. Of course you have to have cake. What else do we need? Ice cream. Okay, that's a pretty good... Are they ready for a birthday party now, you think? I think so. Well, you all get the idea. Be prepared is the motto of the Boy Scouts. It probably should be all of ours. I want to tell you a story about a farmer. It's one of my favorite stories, so you may have heard this before. There was a farmer who needed more help on the farm. There's lots of things that had to be done, and he was just getting too old and too tired to do it. So he needed to hire somebody new for his farm. Okay? So he started interviewing people, and one particular young man came along that seemed pretty good. He knew how to take care of the animals, he knew how to do the hay, he knew how to plow the fields, he knew how to do all of that good stuff. But when he was interviewing this guy, he kept saying something kind of weird. He kept saying, "I can sleep when it storms." The guy thought, "I don't care about your sleeping habits. I need to know, can you work my farm?" Well, the guy seemed to be pretty good, so he hired him. So the farmer and the hired hand went along for a few months, and it was going really well. The farm was up and running, and their production was up, and everything was going really well. Then in the middle of the night, one night, a storm happened. Okay, I need you all to give me storm sounds. Give me some storm sounds. Oh, it was a big storm. No, it was a bigger storm than that. There we go. Okay, it was a big storm. The farmer jumped out of bed, threw his clothes on, and he ran downstairs to the room where the hired hand was, and he shook him. He shook him. He tried to wake him up. Wake up, wake up, wake up. And the guy... No matter how hard he shook him, no matter how loud he yelled, the hired hand was asleep. And he said, "This guy is fired in the morning because I need him to go outside and help me get ready for the storm that's happening." Well, the farmer ran out, and the barn doors were nice and tight. Well, he went on inside, and in the barn, all the animals were very carefully tied up. They had enough water, they had enough hay, they were all really calm. He went back outside and looked around. Well, all the equipment needed to be covered so the rain didn't get into the equipment. Would you believe every tractor, everything that was there was nice and covered with tarp and bungee cords, and it was like everything was ready for a storm. And then he got it. That's what the guy meant when he said that he could sleep when it storms. It means he was prepared. Isn't that cool? So he didn't have to get up and be all anxious in the middle of the night because he had seen that a storm was coming and he was prepared. Now the story that Kelly Jo read just a little bit before was about these bridesmaids. Who can tell me what a bridesmaid is? When do you see a bridesmaid in our world? In a wedding. Okay, and usually they're dressed up in all kinds of fun dresses and they're carrying flowers. They're the bridesmaids. You have groomsmen and bridesmaids at a wedding. I was just at a wedding yesterday and we had some really great bridesmaids and groomsmen. So Jesus tells a story about these bridesmaids. Now they're getting ready, but they have to wait overnight. And in Jesus' day, the way they waited is they needed to have light in case the groom came in the middle of the night to invite them into the party. We don't quite do it the same way nowadays, but that's okay. That's the way Jesus did it. So, I don't know how many of you all have been around an actual lamp with oil. Have you been around one? Okay, I've used this before, but let's try. We've got the oil in there. I filled it up a little bit earlier. And what am I raising now? What's it called? A wick. Is that related to the word wicked? I don't know. I don't think so. So that's the wick. So does it look like I've got enough wick there?
No.
No? Well, let's light it and see. Is that enough of a flame? That's actually too much. Let's do it down a little bit. Yeah, you all have been here when this has been a scary moment, right? Okay, there we go. See, I prepared this time better than I have last time. Okay, come on. There we go. And you can make it. How's that? Now, Pastor Allen still has some extra oil. Now, the story that Jesus told was that there were 10 bridesmaids. It was really, really, really big wedding. 5 of the bridesmaids had made sure they had enough wick and they had enough oil to last all night long because they were waiting for the groom to arrive. But do you know what happened with the other 5 bridesmaids? Kelly? They didn't have enough oil. Is that what happened? And they also didn't have enough wick. So they didn't have enough. It wasn't going to last the whole night. Yes, Kelly?
Also, the ones that belong, the extra were the wise.
Right. To be prepared, to get ready ahead of time, you're usually a little more wise than someone who has to wait to the last minute. So that's exactly what happened. And the 5 who didn't have enough really begged the others if they could have some of theirs. But then if they shared, they might not have enough for the night. So what happened? The 5 that didn't have enough went out to the store. It must have been a 24-hour convenience store with it. Although earlier Bobby swore that this had to be whale oil, and I told him I didn't think we used whale oil in lamps anymore, but maybe it's whale oil. So they were out getting whale oil and wicks. Well, what would happen in the middle of the night? Who came? The groom? Kelly? The bridegroom, which is the same, it's a kind of weird way of saying the same thing. So the groom came, the 5 that were ready were invited into the party, and the 5 that were away didn't get into the party. It's a really, really sad story, but it reminds us that Jesus wants us to be prepared. So on this day, when we're hoping for 2 very different things, we're nonetheless reminded that hope calls us to be prepared. It's National Missing Children's Day. And as Gina de Jesus' mother, Felix and Nancy, reminded us in this very sanctuary not too many years ago, that hope demands we always be prepared for that which we desire. Hope really isn't hope if you aren't willing to be prepared for that hope to be realized, even after decades of waiting for your child to be found. They reminded us. Now, we adults have a phrase that you kids might or might not know. It's called eternal vigilance. All of us must be eternally vigilant to put action behind our hope so that our missing children will be found. If you haven't looked at the pictures in the stairwell going down in the community building, I invite you to do that on your way out today. They're all the children in Ohio who are still currently missing. If you're unable to go down the stairwell, Michelle will make sure that you know where you can find those pictures to look at them. The more people that see those pictures, the more likely we will be prepared if we saw that young person on the street. After worship, Michelle is going to have some time in our community hour where she has packets for parents, and even if you're a grandparent or a neighbor, and they're packets to help kids get all the identification they need to be prepared. God forbid that your child would come up missing. All those important pieces of information that help to find children quickly. So we invite you to be prepared by coming into our community hour and having a chance to learn a little bit more about that. But this day we're also remembering loved ones who have already died, who have moved on. It's Memorial Day Sunday. But you know, this also urges us to be prepared. One of the things I'm reminded again and again at this time, my husband Craig, whenever he worked for an AIDS resource center, and he had daily meetings with people who were identified as having HIV/AIDS, he was amazed at how they both were remorseful that they had not prepared themselves better for this. At that point, it was an imminent death, because we had not come up with some of the drugs. But they took every single moment that they then had to prepare themselves. Their bodies, their lives were full of joy and possibility because they had a sense that this life is precious. And I believe every time we come to a memorial service, in addition to mourning those who've gone, I'm sure they're crying out from heaven, saying, prepare yourself. Not in that kind of morose way, but in that way of doing what you can to live life to the fullest. What this means to me is that none of us have the luxury of putting off being the kind of person that we believe God and Jesus and Scripture call us, invite us, and urge us to be. And it's not so much about living to rules and regulations as much as it being a good person, following in the way of Jesus, being our best selves that God created us to be. You know, when Jesus was asked the most important thing to do to be a good and faithful person, he found two things. Love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. And when Jesus was describing heaven and how we were supposed to get to heaven, he gave a story about taking care of the least of these, the people in our world who needed people the most. That's what Jesus said. And we need to prepare our lives by doing what Jesus said, following in Jesus' way. As your pastor, I would say, particularly to the adults here, that there's more that we must do to prepare ourselves for our death. And that is to make our plans known to our family and closest of friends, to our doctors, if you've got a lawyer, to your pastor. There is nothing morbid talking about your plans for your funeral and those you love. Once again, Craig, when his mother was on her deathbed with cancer, she had, and this is not an overstatement, she had a ball planning her own funeral. And at the end of it, when they had it all on paper with the songs and the hymns and the scriptures and the people she wanted to be there to read and all that, she looked at it and said, it's a shame I'm not going to be here. This looks like one wonderful service. Craig assured her she would very much be there. How many of you have a living will designating, God forbid, some kind of accident or illness happens and your family has to make that decision? Please get a living will. How many of you have a will so that the folks around you don't have to fight or argue or wonder, where do you want all those wonderful things and your resources to go? How many of you have an obituary already written? I can tell you this would be a great gift to your pastor. A great gift to your pastor. Tell you how many times I've stood up here and said, so-and-so graduated from such-and-such high school in 1945, 46. No, I think it was 47. It doesn't actually happen like that, but that would be a wonderful gift. Write your own obituary. Have fun doing it. Put all that good stuff that you don't like to gloat about while you're alive. We'll do it for you afterwards. How many of you have written down just simply the hymns you want sung in your funeral? In fact, it may be the greatest gift you could possibly give your loved ones. I know it was for my mother when she died. I knew exactly which dress she wanted to be buried in. There's nothing more comforting to go up to that casket and know that's the dress Mama wanted to be in because she told me. And I knew that was the casket she wanted. She loved that color blue. She picked it out herself. I knew that she didn't want to be cremated. She wanted to be buried next to my father. I didn't have to guess that. I didn't have to wonder that. We can be prepared for our own death by living life to the fullest while we're here and by letting our loved ones know what we want when we're gone. If you want help with this, just ask. It would be my joy to be with you. Now don't take this wrong, but nothing would please me more as your pastor than to say I help my congregation prepare for its death. I mean that. So just like the Boy Scout who is always prepared to do his duty, just like the farmhand who can sleep when it storms, just like the wise bridesmaids who had plenty of oil and wicks in their lamp for the bridegroom's invitation, may we too be ready. May be ready to find and rejoice lost boys and girls who are finally found, and let us be ready for the day of our own death with confidence and full assurance. Let us be ready for home. Amen. And as we conclude our final hymn, I would invite us to stand as we are able and renew our own faith by singing vibrantly our closing hymn. And if you'd like to join this church or give your life to Jesus, please come forward while we're singing.